It started with something simple, something innocent. I'd been at my friend's house a dozen times before. We'd grown up together, practically brothers. His mom, always polite, always graceful, always just his mom. But this time was different. Maybe it was the quiet of summer. Or maybe I was just noticing things I never had before. She walked into the kitchen wearing something casual, soft, and form-fitting. I looked. It wasn't planned, not deliberate. My eyes moved, then locked, then lingered. And she saw me. Noticed it. There wasn't anger. No awkward shuffle or stern words. She held my gaze for a second, no smile, no frown. Just knowing. Then turned and walked out. That second stayed with me all day. It wasn't just the look, it was the way she didn't make it a big deal. Like she'd expected it. Like it wasn't the first time someone had done it. I told myself I was being ridiculous. She was older, married, and I was her son's friend. But my mind didn't care about logic. That night, lying in bed on the spare mattress, I couldn't stop thinking about that one moment. How smooth her walk was. How calm her face stayed. I shifted under the sheets, trying to sleep, but every turn brought her back. The next day she was normal again. Or maybe she was pretending to be. I tried not to watch her, but my eyes betrayed me. Every time she moved I noticed. The way her hair curled near her neck, how her shirt rested against her body. She made coffee, turned slightly, and I saw the curve of her hip. It wasn't just physical anymore. It was presence. She carried herself like she didn't need anyone's attention, but somehow had everyone's anyway. We didn't speak much. Just the usual pleasantries. But the silence was louder now. Every time she passed by there was an energy in the air. She leaned a little closer to hand me something. Her fingers brushed mine. Maybe by accident. Maybe not. Felt deliberate, slow. She didn't flinch. Neither did I. My heart beat faster, but I didn't pull away. I just looked at her, hoping she'd say something, clarify this fog. But she didn't. She just turned and left me there again. By the time evening came, I couldn't tell if I was imagining it all, or if I was being tested. Her movements, her glances, they played with my instincts. I kept asking myself if it was wrong to feel this. If I was crossing some silent line just by watching. But she never stopped me. Never warned me off. Felt like she was aware. Not just of my eyes, but of my hesitation. And still she didn't shut it down. When I finally went to sleep, I knew things had shifted. Not in words, not in actions, but in understanding. Something unspoken had passed between us. I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but I knew the moment I looked too long and she didn't look away, the rules had already changed. The change wasn't loud. It crept in slowly, hidden in small gestures that didn't belong in any ordinary conversation. She started coming into the room more often, lingering just long enough to make her presence felt. Her voice softened when she spoke to me, low and personal. She called me mature. Said I'd grown into myself. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say much. Just listened. Every time she smiled, it felt like there was something beneath it. Not flirtation. Not playfulness. Something quieter. Deliberate. She began finding reasons to be near. The kitchen became her new office when I was in there. She brushed past me without apology, let her hand graze mine when passing a plate. Once I reached for a glass, and she reached at the same time. Her hand rested on mine for a breath too long. No excuse. No rush to pull away. My fingers didn't move either. We stood there, silent, until she finally let go without comment. I watched her walk away and wondered if it was my imagination, or if she was fully aware of the tension she was planting. Later that day, she asked questions she hadn't before. Was I seeing anyone? What did I want from a woman? She said my generation didn't understand patience or depth. I told her I liked real things, and she nodded slowly like that answer meant something more than I'd intended. She leaned in and adjusted my collar. I didn't need help, but I didn't stop her either. Her fingers rested there just under my throat, warm and sure. Then she let them slide down slowly as if smoothing fabric, except it felt like something else entirely. The air grew heavier with every hour. She knew I noticed everything. The way she moved, how her eyes followed mine before turning away. She didn't try to hide it anymore. One afternoon she stood near the window, light hitting just right. Her shirt hugged her perfectly. I was across the room, but she turned and caught my stare. This time she smiled, not playful, not teasing, just accepting, and held it. That smile said she knew, that she had always known, and she wasn't going to stop it. I tried to avoid her after that, stayed in my room, used my phone more, acted distracted. But the silence only made things worse. Every time she passed by the door, I hoped she'd stop. When I heard her voice in the hallway, my chest tightened. It wasn't just desire anymore. It was the fact that she seemed to want me to feel it. She wasn't resisting it. And the more she leaned in, the more I realized how thin the boundary was between suggestion and permission. By the time she entered my room with laundry and sat on the edge of the bed, we weren't pretending anymore. Her tone dropped, her story shifted, and she talked about being lonely. About how people stop seeing you once you become someone's wife or someone's mother. I didn't speak much. I just listened, close enough to feel her breath. Her knee touched mine. She didn't move it. Neither did I. She said nothing after that. Just smiled lightly and walked out, leaving the door halfway open like it was my decision whether it stayed that way. He left that night to meet some friends. I was supposed to stay and kill time, maybe order something and sleep early. She came into the living room with a bottle and 2 glasses, said nothing about his absence, just poured and handed me a drink like we'd done this before. The music played softly in the background, nothing dramatic, but enough to fill the gaps between what we weren't saying. Her eyes didn't wander tonight. They were on me, steady, waiting. I took the glass, sipped, and felt the weight of her silence wrap around the room. She asked if I was nervous. I said no. It wasn't a lie. I wasn't nervous. I was aware that everything had been moving toward this point. She stood in front of me, too close for a casual conversation. She wasn't hiding behind politeness or pretending anymore. I felt the pull, like gravity, like something we both had stopped resisting. Her hand reached up and adjusted my collar again, same gesture, different meaning. This time her fingers didn't stop at the fabric. They slid down to my chest, rested there, warm and unshaking. I looked at her. She didn't flinch. No shame, no second-guessing. She whispered that she knew I'd been watching her, that she'd seen it before, but this time she didn't want to ignore it, that her marriage had become background noise, that sometimes, someone seeing you changes everything. I didn't say a word. I just watched her as her hand moved to the side of my neck, and for a moment, we stayed like that, frozen but fully present. The kiss didn't come with hesitation. She leaned in, and I met her halfway. It wasn't rushed. It was deliberate. Like we both needed it to last, needed it to matter. Her lips were soft, slow, and when she pulled back, she didn't say a word. Just took my hand, and led me without force. The hallway was quiet, but I heard everything. My breath, her steps, the hum beneath my skin that told me nothing about this was casual. Clothes fell away without urgency. Her hands moved with purpose, practice but personal. Every touch was intentional. There was no guilt in her face, no regret in mine. Just clarity. She wasn't just fulfilling desire. She was reclaiming something. Control, maybe. Attention. The right to feel wanted. And I gave it without holding back. Not to impress, not to dominate, but to be exactly what she needed in that moment. When it ended, the silence didn't feel awkward. Her head on my chest, her fingers tracing circles. We didn't speak. We didn't promise. We didn't ask questions. It wasn't love. It wasn't confusion. It was simply 2 people who had allowed something real to surface, fully aware of what it meant. I looked at her, and she looked back, calm, steady, unapologetic. She rolled away gently and closed her eyes, and I lay there with the weight of what had just happened pressed deep into my chest, knowing there was no going back.